All right, let's get right into it. We are about to unpack one of the most significant and, frankly, explosive document dumps in modern history. These are the Epstein files, the ones that have been sealed for years, and they are absolutely shaking things up across the globe.
So let's start with a number, 3.5 million. Just take a second and let that sink in. That isn't just some random statistic. It represents a fundamental shift in what the public now knows. That's right. We're talking about 3.5 million pages of documents. And it's not just text. We're talking over 2,000 videos and 180,000 images that the Department of Justice finally released. They've pulled back the curtain on decades of secrets. So that leads us to the big question, right? How did a bunch of documents cause a political earthquake that's being felt literally all over the world? Because, this story was never really just about one guy. It's about a whole system of power, of influence, and of secrecy that connected some of the most powerful people on the planet. So, how did we even get here? I mean, how did these files see the light of day? Well, the story of their release is almost as dramatic as what's in them. It involves a wild political back and forth. I mean, the political whiplash on this was just incredible. It all starts as a campaign promise back in June 2024. Then, by February of 25, the Attorney General herself says the client list is on her desk ready for review. But then, boom, just 5 months later, the story does a complete 180. The DOJ says, nope, no such list exists, and President Trump calls the whole thing a big hoax. You can imagine the political pressure that created, and that's when Congress decided it was time to step in. So with the administration basically digging in its heels, Congress took matters into its own hands. And what happened next was, well, it was one of those super rare moments of unity you just don't see in Washington anymore. They came up with something called the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And its goal was incredibly simple but also incredibly powerful. It mandated that the Attorney General had to release every single unclassified document related to the Epstein investigations. And they had to do it within 30 days. No more delays, no more excuses, period. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. This whole issue just completely shattered the usual political lines. You had a progressive Democrat, Ro Khanna, introducing the bill. And then you had a libertarian-leaning Republican, Thomas Massie, who actually forced the vote using this rare procedural move. It was truly a team effort from opposite ends of the spectrum. And the results? Well, look at this. It's a kind of consensus you almost never see. The House passed the act 427 to 1. Just look at that breakdown. 216 Republicans, 211 Democrats, all voting yes. It was a massive, overwhelming demand for the truth to come out. From there, the bill just sailed through the Senate with everybody on board. And then, facing all that pressure, President Trump, who had called it a hoax, did another reversal and signed it into law. The 30-day countdown had officially begun. But, winning the fight in Congress was just the beginning. The actual release of those 3.5 million pages, it was messy. It was chaotic, controversial, and it drew a ton of criticism right out of the gate. The whole rollout was just a disaster. First, the DOJ blew past its own 30-day deadline, which was, illegal. Then, when the files finally started to appear, hundreds of pages were just completely blacked out. At one point, files literally vanished from the DOJ website only to reappear after a huge public outcry. And get this, even now, the DOJ says they're done, but some investigative reports suggest the full collection is actually closer to 6 million pages, which leaves you wondering, what are we still not seeing? All that chaos and controversy just leads to the most important question of all, right? After all the political drama, after all the fighting, what did we actually learn from the documents that did come out? So let's dive into it. What was actually in these 3.5 million pages? Well, it turns out to be a really complex mix of, on the one hand, hard evidence, and on the other, some deeply, deeply disturbing allegations that remain unproven. Okay, but before we go any further, this is absolutely crucial to understand. The sources are really clear on this point. Just because someone's name appears in these documents, it does not automatically mean they're guilty of a crime. It just means that, for one reason or another, they were considered relevant to the legal cases. That's a really important distinction. So, with that in mind, the files did contain some absolute bombshells. For example, there's an email from Richard Branson to Epstein that says, "As long as you bring your harem." There's another from Elon Musk asking when the wildest party on your island would be. Then you have financial records showing Epstein sent money to a top British politician, and even a photograph that appears to show the former Prince Andrew in a very compromising position.
Now, the files also contained some shocking allegations, and we have to talk about them, but with a major caveat. For instance, an FBI tip details an alleged victim accusing former presidents George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton of assault. But, and this is a huge but, the file itself notes that authorities found no evidence to back up that claim. Similarly, another report details an anonymous call about an alleged incident with Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein. Again, these are unverified, unsubstantiated claims. So beyond the shocking headlines, the release of these documents had immediate, real-world consequences. We're talking resignations, arrests, and full-blown political crises erupting all around the globe. The impact was swift and it was severe. Just take the case of Lord Peter Mandelson in the UK. The files come out revealing payments he received from Epstein. Within days, he resigns from his party. A few weeks after that, he's arrested. You can draw a direct line from the release of a document to a major legal consequence. And what's really fascinating is when you start to analyze the fallout, you see this huge difference between continents. In Europe, these revelations led to arrests in the UK, criminal charges in Norway, top government officials resigning in Slovakia. But in the United States, while you saw plenty of people resigning from corporate boards and universities, the legal and political reckoning for the biggest names, well, it's been a lot quieter. So where does that leave us? Look, the release of these 3.5 million pages has, without a doubt, exposed a system that seems built to protect the powerful. But it also leaves us with this huge, lingering question. With millions of pages still potentially hidden away, and with the consequences so different around the world, is this the end of the story? Or are we just at the very beginning of a much longer fight for real accountability?